Hi, everybody. We're trying to get this together. It's episode 59 of A Fern Between Us.
We're two of the four owners of Vivac Winery, clumsily making our way through
right? Do you
Facebook
see,
Live.
like, this isn't even, I mean, this is like ridiculous over here, what we've got going for our little setup.
No, you're wrong.
No. Well, I know you like seeing your jacket over our plants to try to shield that, but I thought that was a little distracting myself.
Well, yeah, now it looks like it's crooked, though.
Well, I think it was crooked. So,
anyway,
guess what?
I'm Jesse.
Yes, and I'm Michelle, and Denali Day, our daughter, who has taken over this for the last couple of months. She got her first COVID shot yesterday, so she's not feeling 100%. So she's left it up to us to do. So now we're crooked, we're out of order. We're filming with the other side of the camera, which isn't as good. It's a hot mess.
Ah, it's fun though. Any old who. Today we're drinking some Riesling.
Yes.
From our very own 1725 vineyard, and we're talking about vineyards.
Yes. Right? Kind of makes sense, right?
I think it makes sense.
I think I need a drink. All right, so real quick check-in. How's everything going? Anything you would like to share before we get into tasting notes on Riesling?
No. I got a big bruise on my thigh. I've been biking a lot, trying to get ready for a trip coming up in towards the end of June, exactly. And yeah, I feel like I'm kind of getting there, you know.
Yeah, we're at the end. I think we hired all the people.
Maybe hired all. I think we hired all the people. We
have a small army now.
There's a chance somebody was saying something about maybe one more, but we'll see.
Oh no. No.
That might have to wait till Lily gets back.
Yeah, no more. We do have a really great team coming on, though. I'm very excited about these new people, and they're really excited, which I love. So that's awesome. One of the things that's big news that we need to talk about, we are moving into a really busy season, and all of you wonderful people have been going nuts wanting to come and visit us and do stuff and have events again, and we're figuring out all these safe ways to do that. And it's going to be a rock and roll summer and fall, so we are actually going to move to one time per month for the show.
Oh, yeah.
For June, July, August, and September.
Okay.
You guys are enjoying the outdoors. Everybody's a little more busy. And so the first Thursday of every month, we will be live. And we're going to taste the Wine Club wines and answer all of your burning questions that you've sent in over the month. And and then in October, when things slow down a little bit more, we will come back to once a week.
So it'll be the next 2 weeks in a row, and then
yes,
not until the first week in July.
What? Wait. So
next week.
Yes,
the 20-something, and then
the first week of June, and then not until the first week of July.
Yeah. So you got two more.
Yes.
2 more coming at you right now.
Yeah, exactly. So keep that in mind. It's like, wait, what?
Too much wine already.
It's been a day. All right. So Riesling. Riesling is super fun, and a lot of people, one of the big things is, why is it always sweet? It's not. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about right away.
Cool. Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be. Why, just because it does well with sweet doesn't mean that's the only way it should be. And it's, worldwide, it's not always sweet. But the sweet tradition probably started in Germany, where they have they measure their wines on varying levels of sweetness and like when you can pick them and stuff like that. So the sweeter it gets, the more concentrated it gets, and their upper end bottles, they do it like they set the Germans, they have rules for everything. So they set an official harvest date for each individual region, and they say, okay, October 20th is the official harvest date. And then from there, they start saying, okay, this was their qualifications or whatever. This is 15 days after. This is 30 days after. This is 60 days after harvest date when these were harvested, and they go all the way out to 120 days. So that's like in February. They're finally harvesting the last of their stuff. They make a little 5-gallon batch and charge you like $1,000 for a half bottle.
It makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
When you start looking at all those things, and I think that's as once we get into the questions about the vineyard too, I think that it might start making more sense to people why wines can get so expensive. But yeah, I think one of the things that's specifically important to talk about is how dry your Riesling is.
Our Riesling is very dry. We like it that way. I think the reason that in America in general it's been sweet is because we had a lot of service members over in Germany. And so as they, just over the years, I mean, I think we still have bases there. People spend lots of time, and that's where they get introduced to wine. They come back and they like a sweet Riesling that just automatically, and it makes a lot of sense because those are beautiful wines over there.
Yes, they are.
So American producers were catering to that, and then every time they saw the word Riesling, it was associated with a nice sweet white wine.
Absolutely.
And so there's a few of us bucking the trend now, trying to make dry Rieslings here in the States, and it does really well. People love it.
It's beautiful, and there's a lot of areas in Central Europe that are making incredibly beautiful, very, very dry, very, very high acid, salty even on some instances, Rieslings.
Yep.
So one of the things I wanted to touch on really quick was that what are you looking for in a Riesling, right? So that's one of the things. People are trying to figure out what is it that I should be even buying this for? And it can really change depending on where it's grown. So if it's, being harvested a little earlier and it's got a real heavy mineral content in the soil, there's all these little nuances that can create a different flavor profile. So you can end up with more lemon and pear and minerality to the wine. And that's one wine. I love those wines. That's one wine. But it's still Riesling when it comes across grown in a warmer climate where you get more tropical notes, more of those pineapple and
apricot.
And so I think it can confuse people because they're looking for Riesling to be just one thing. And it's not. It really depends on where you're getting it from and depending on what kind of wine you like. So if you like those more high acid, mineral, you want to
go to cooler regions, basically. Germany. You want to go to Germany.
Or
in Germany it tastes like petrol.
Oh yes.
They have
I love that.
They have the shale. It's their vineyards are on this shale ore outcropping or whatever. So it tastes a little bit like diesel fuel or oil or something like that, but it's in such a pleasant way, and then it's it's oily,
it's got a real viscosity on your palate, which is really interesting, and the aroma is very subtle. It's under the fruit, so it's not like you feel like you're standing at the gas pump. It's this element that I love. Thank you for bringing that up. That's really good.
Yeah, it sounds nasty, but it's something to behold.
Right. And so you did mention, the petrol from the soil.
Yeah.
I talked for just a brief second about the different climate versus soils and how that really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have made Riesling from grapes from the south versus our grapes up here?
Yep.
What are some of the differences that you see, and what do you attribute those to?
All right, so the grapes that we get from down south always have a less lower acid content, acidity content, always, because it's so warm down there. The grapes drop acid like crazy. For whatever reason,
they are dropping acid down there.
they're dabbing or dosing or whatever you call it, dropping acid. That's what we used to call it. Or people, whatever. actually heard a thing about a guy who is collecting, an art gallery owner that's collecting tabs with all the different designs on them.
Oh, wow.
And they've tried to shut him down several times because he has acid that he's selling, right? Because they're actual works of art. And, that he's collected, over the years from all these like Dead concerts and, since the 50s and 60s. Anyway, he's like, well, sunlight exposure reduces the LSD content in the thing. It changes it chemically. Therefore, I'm not selling acid. Boom. And he's never been, he's been charged like 4 times, but he's never been. Anyway, total side.
That's interesting.
Acid. Anyway,
so the Riesling dropping acid in the south.
So it drops acid in the south, and so then we have to acidify. So we add some tartaric acid to bring it up to about how we
Now, what exactly is tartaric for our audience that doesn't...
It's basically, all right, so every piece of fruit, everything that has acids or sugars in them, there's multiple different kinds. You've heard of like sucrose and fructose, and there's I want to say 6 or 8 different kinds of sugar in a wine, and there's
right. That's the sucrose and fructose.
Exactly, and then with acids, you've got 5 major ones. 2 or 3 of them are like defining, but you could have citric acid, you could have succinic acid, which is kind of makes it salty. It's a weird salty acid. They've got tartaric acid.
That's what I was talking about with the Central European Rieslings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, tartaric acid is an acid that doesn't have an individual flavor to it, so it's really good to drop your pH and get it in the zone where it's protective, and then it basically mimics the flavors of the acids that are already in your wine.
Naturally occurring.
Exactly. So if your wine
it's
already
more of
has...
a supplement rather than an addition of flavor or something like that. It's just bringing out what's already in the wine that the grape's already giving it.
Whereas if we were to add citric acid, you would know it. It would taste like...
Sweet tarts.
It would taste like lemons and pears, or, lemons and oranges and limes, somewhere in that category.
Whenever I buy specifically cheaper wine, we buy wine the gamut. We're always looking to see what new producers are doing, different price points. It's really important. Mm-hmm. We put in that effort for you. But so inexpensive wines, generally speaking, are trying to fix some problems. You often encounter that, and the acidity can be one of the big ones that they are trying to fix. And if it tastes like sweet tarts, it's an immediate for me. I'm like, okay, I see.
Problematic.
Yeah, and I start falling down, this rabbit hole of all the things that are probably wrong with it.
But sweet tarts are so good, though.
Oh, I love sweet tarts. Not my wine, though.
Gotcha.
Okay.
You can put a sweet tart in your wine. Nice.
So do
Michelle
you feel...
would hate it.
I'll invite Michelle over and put a sweet tart in it and see what happens.
Instead of a blueberry in your champagne or whatever.
So please don't do that. But so when you make a Riesling out of our grapes up here, do you feel like it's just ready to go? No.
Oh yeah. So I feel like without an acidity addition from the southern grapes, southern Riesling specifically, or whites in general, without the addition of some acid, they come across real flabby. They're not. You wouldn't like them. We wouldn't like them. Nobody. You kind of need a tart thing. Up here, up north, we have the opposite problem. Either they're perfect or they're even maybe too acidic. So we've had grapes come in off the vine where the sugar's right, but the acidity on it is, it's more acidic. The wine itself is more acidic than not hydrochloric, but what's the other? There's. I can't even think of it. Anyway, it's below.
My brain's not working.
It's
I don't
like
know.
We get them in at a pH 2.8, if that makes any sense to some people. But it's really, really acidic. I mean, you could
you could dissolve things in something like that, right?
You can strip all kinds of things. You can dissolve things.
Wow, now we're talking about stripping.
Strippers. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So they're dropping acid in the south and they're stripping in the north. So it's pretty exciting. Is that what they mean when they say it's a racy wine?
Maybe. That could be exactly what they're talking about.
All right, we need to jump into questions.
Okay.
All right. We don't have Denali telling us to hurry, so we're going to try. Okay. How do I identify the 2 different grapevines that are growing in my yard?
Ooh, yeah, good luck. There.
Well, that's fun advice.
If you wanted to spend money and time, you could send them to UC Davis and get them DNA analyzed. And other than that, you're gonna be working on best guesses. There is such thing as people that can look at leaves and potentially, they could get you closer if you have it narrowed down to 3 or 4.
There are books out there.
There are books.
They're outrageously expensive, but
each vine has its own. The leaves are their fingerprint, basically. But
once you get some grapes,
it's not that.
There's also that gives you a little bit more input towards what the grapes taste like, what they look like, the color, the pigment, what they look like on the inside versus the outside, the shape of the leaf, the color of the leaf. There's all these little things that really are a telltale sign of that grape. But it is going to take some research, some very patient analysis as well. A
good plant biologist may be able to do it.
Also, if they seem to be growing wild, you're probably looking at a totally different type of grape than you think.
Did somebody plant these there 20 years ago, and then you bought the house and they didn't know, and now you're stuck with these 2 grapevines? That's different than somebody found a grape, growing next to the river and transplanted it, because you can take cuttings and they'll grow. So, and there's 17 different families of grapes. Vitis vinifera is the one that is the only one native to Europe, and it's also the only one that has like the very best wines are made out of that. So that's all the varietals you've probably ever heard of.
All of your Cabernet, your Riesling, you name it. Those are what we're making wine out of.
Those are all Vitis vinifera. If you've heard of a hybrid vine, that's
Scheisse. No, I'm just kidding. It's fine.
That's the universities like in the East Coast have crossed Vitis vinifera with one of the 15 different varieties that are found native in the Americas.
Fascinating.
And trying to make a wine, a grape that will taste good when it's made into wine. But as of yet, they have not found like all that many great wine. If the best you can do is a B+, it's hard to, I don't know.
Do you really want to plant that, put all the money into it,
right?
Take 5 years to find out that it's not ever going to be as good of a wine as you want to make?
And
we did that.
Not to trash all the American varietals. There would be no wine industry today if it weren't for American varietals, because there's a thing called phylloxera that wiped out all the vineyards in all of Europe, basically. I mean, I think they had like 5% remaining in the early, about 100 years ago. And they took rootstock from the Americas, which was tolerant, or, it wasn't susceptible to phylloxera. And so all the vines in Europe now have phylloxera, or have American rootstock with Vitis vinifera on the top. So
it is super important. Really wonderful that we have it.
Exactly.
Really grateful that we aren't making wines from it.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry, I guess. Good luck.
Contact the New Mexico. If you're in New Mexico, contact the New Mexico State Viticulturist.
Even if you're not, contact the state viticulturist at NMSU
or in your state. But yeah, our guy's name is Gil Giese. He's awesome. He might be able to lead you down a better path.
That's what I was thinking. He's brilliant.
Yeah, he comes from Virginia and Georgia and stuff like that too. So he could probably tell you even if you're not in New Mexico.
Okay, we got to go.
Sorry.
How much does it cost to put in a vineyard?
About $20,000 an acre.
And why? Where's that money? Is it in the vine? Is it in the structure? Is it in the...
All of it, right? So the vine will cost you $3 or $4 a piece. The T-post metal's going up. They'll cost you $15 or $20 a piece. You got your end posts for probably $20 each, depending on what you're using. You've got your line, your
Drip irrigation, your sprinklers.
All your drip stuff.
Manure.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I'm spending like $3,000 an acre per year on manure right now. So
that's a lot of shit.
That's a lot of shit. But a bunch of shit, man. No,
Wow.
so if you're seriously bootstrapping it, you might be able to do it for $12,000 an acre, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. How did you decide which grapes to plant and how to lay out the vineyard?
You want to look at it. You look at the aspect, like what the angle is tilted towards where the sun goes. You don't want your vines to be exposed to sun always on the same side, so you kind of want a north-south row, sort of. But it depends also, once again, on your exact location. You can also pruning techniques to mitigate too much direct sun, depending on where you are.
That means cutting the foliage so that it can create a canopy
Right.
and protect the grapes, or expose them when they need some extra sunlight. It's a very technical and beautiful artistic.
Yeah.
It's kind of like bonsai trees.
It is a little bit.
Where you're really crafting where the sun's going to be, how much sun they need, and how to protect them, yet also offer them the sun that they need.
And ideally, you're never on the very valley floor. Like ideally, you're on a slight slope so that the air keeps moving, because every place has frost worries, both in the spring and the fall.
And it settles in the low spot.
And it settles in the low spot, exactly.
Excellent. Okay. How did you decide
the varietals?
What grapes? Yeah.
For here, we're really specific because we get down to -5, -10 often enough. Every 3 or 4 years we get down lower than that. So
we have down on it.
We have to. Some things like Merlot and Cabernet have a really hard time much below 5 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. So winter kill is how we decided. For us, it has to be tolerant enough and produce a great wine if it does survive. So that's how we decided.
All right. Do vineyards look different if they are planted in different grapes?
Yeah, totally. For one, your pruning technique is going to be different sometimes. And for two, the grapes themselves sometimes look different. So like the ones we're about to plant now, the Pinot Meunier, they kind of have this like white fuzzy leaf, and it kind of gives this like greenish whitish thing.
Kind of a frosty.
Yeah, kind of a frosty and almost into the blue thing a little bit. Whereas like the rest of the vineyard looks, darker greens when the leaf is old, and kind of like this color when the leaf is young. So it's kind of it'll matter. Well, some of them you want them to be up higher too, and some vineyards like you want to put your fruiting wire high and they grow down. There is that. Not as common. There's also crown pruning where like Chateauneuf de Pop.
That's what I was going to talk about.
They grow a little tree, and then they have like the spot that all the things grow out of. They don't have even wires.
It's a bush.
It's a bush, exactly. So they prune it down to like just this stump, and then it's a bush all summer, and then they prune that back, and then it's a bush all summer again next year.
So that's really an interesting aspect of what you're planting where, and if you get good at it, you can recognize it as you're driving through wine country. The other thing is in the fall, you can see at our vineyard around our tasting room which vines are changing color and how far into that they are, and they're very different.
They're very different, and it's for a week there you're like, oh, I could see that's one varietal, that's another varietal,
which I love. I think that's really fun.
Totally.
All right, what is the hardest part of owning a vineyard?
Vineyard or winery?
The vineyard.
Oh, vineyard.
Yeah, the money, the work,
the money, the work, being a farmer, all that stuff. Yeah, no, we don't. All right, so we always say you don't have to go to Vegas if you're a farmer. You gamble for a living, because you're subject to all the elements. You could have frost in the spring. You can have severe winds that damage all the fruit. You could have hail at any point, at any year.
Birds, varmint.
Birds, varmint, and then you can have frost before you pick. So there's like all kinds of things that can go wrong.
And we're lucky that we don't have all the rot and mildew and all those things that they have in Europe. So
exactly. Or in the hotter places in the U.S. So like Texas has a really hard time maintaining a vineyard because it'll be great for a handful of years, and then there's a thing called Pierce's disease that comes in because they're so humid. So you'll notice in Texas they've planted in the hill country, which is super high compared to, so it's the least humid spot in central Texas, and then everything else is basically West Texas because it's higher and drier. It's more like southern New Mexico where we get a lot of our grapes.
Yeah.
So, but it just it's hard no matter where you are, though. I don't think anybody has it easy.
Well, and I think it also depends on how you are managing your vineyard. We do everything by hand. We hand plant them lovingly, each and every one. We drag our children out and make them slave in the hot sun.
And then pose for a picture.
Yeah. Make it look like you're having fun. But
it's our favorite part.
It's, each thing is really thought through. Then we don't harvest mechanically. We're harvesting by hand. And then if a frost is coming through and we are looking at damage, we actually go out and plant. We actually we don't plant the fires. We put fires around the periphery.
Build fires. You light fires.
I was thinking of the bales. Put a bale there. But words, they're hard today. But
not so much during harvest, though. It's mostly in the spring.
No, of course.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's what I'm talking about. But these managing all the different elements start to finish, from planting to picking to, all these different things are labor intensive. And so if you then have to build fires around the periphery of the vineyard in order to save it from these late frosts, that is very labor intensive. And luckily we had, the year that we had to do that, we had all kinds of wine club members and friends and neighbors and everybody come out and party at 2 a.m. to save the Gruner, which was fantastic. And we did.
Yeah.
But it's also not your typical job.
No.
Right?
It's really not.
You're a farmer.
Yeah.
It's very stressful. And everybody's like, oh, how glorious, you own a winery. And you're like, yep. What is the story behind the names of the vineyards? And second part, what will you name the next one and where will it be? So let's start with the story behind the vineyards.
Okay. 1725 Vineyard is the one that you see going into our tasting room here in Dixon. So we named that after the year that land was granted in a Spanish land grant. It was the year 1725, and it contained
through this whole region, and it's where they first started planting grapes.
Exactly.
And that was actually the first time that we did a competition to see who could help us, because we'd run out of ideas ourselves. It's hard when you're naming wines and naming things and naming. You're like, I don't know.
So a local historian basically came through and gave us that idea, which was awesome.
Yeah, which I love. It's still one of my favorite.
And it was one of his ancestors too.
That was super cool. And we've lost him since. Yeah. But really, he was such a treasure trove of history for this area.
Exactly.
All right, so
then the Abbott Vineyard is down in Velarde, and their last name is Abbott, so that's pretty easy.
It's the family that first planted it. They still own it. They have allowed us lovingly to take over control of it and use all the grapes, which are phenomenal.
Exactly. And then we've had the Fire Vineyard, which is here on this property where Chris and I grew up. And Michelle and I now reside. And that got its name from a 4th of July party where we ended up setting the neighbor's vineyard on fire.
Well, their property. It wasn't a vineyard at the time.
Yeah. Set their property on fire. It was just a vacant field, basically, that they weren't using yet. And
Chris and Jesse were kids.
Yeah, we were tiny little kids. And anyway, it was the first time that we became aware of the property next door. And then at some point, my dad actually ended up buying that property. And that's where we planted our first grapes ever.
Yeah.
Back in 99.
98, right?
99 is when we planted.
Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, one of the fun tidbits is that Chris and Jesse grew up on this farm, this idyllic little place in Dixon, and then have slowly ascertained property. If you plant it under vine, is it yours? I think so.
Well, no, then, all right, so then my dad cut off this acre for us.
Oh,
and
well,
the
yes.
acre where the vineyard is for Chris. He used it as collateral to buy another house, but anyway, so
it's a little complicated, but yeah, we got
exactly,
it. We're taking over, and we're going to have this all under
vine. We're going to
vine.
be planning this whole property at some point.
Yes, exactly. That's where we're getting at. Okay, so super fun, interesting stories behind the vineyards themselves. Do you have your eyes set on a new property? Where might that be? We're expanding to 1725 all the time.
Honestly, we get people ask us all the time, like, what if, like, we would love to have vines. Would you want to do that? So like, I actually haven't looked that far forward because we've got a few more years before we plant all of our own properties. At some point, we will start looking for more properties, and we'll probably be a little bit specific so that we don't, waste our time. In a place that's going to frost out every year or something like that. So, but I don't know. It would be up here in Dixon, Velarde area, I think, because I'm really digging on the wines that are coming out of here. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of where I want to put my time and energy after that.
Well, and I think that it's also, a follow-up is what we might name it. And I think it's one of those things that we're just trying to reflect on some of the history of the property.
Site specific, so...
Yeah, the Fire Vineyard is really fun because it conjures up that memory of childhood right here on the childhood family property.
Right.
And 1725... is such a great historic reference. And the Abbott family has been around forever and been a major component to Jesse and Chris growing up even. Some of the Abbott family babysat and...
For sure, it's going to be a situation where, depending on who the owners are, maybe somebody else owns it and we manage it once again. So then I think they kind of have the right to name it, honestly.
Right, yeah. And if it were something that we ended up with, then maybe we might end up doing another competition. That was fun. That was pretty cool. There were some amazing suggestions. So, all right, last one. I can't believe we were able to. Sorry, guys. How much wine do you get from an acre of vines?
Oh man, that varies completely. Why
does it vary?
Any of the big wineries or whatever, the corporate wineries, let's call them, anything under $12 a bottle, basically, you're looking at probably vineyards that are sourcing 8, 10, 12 tons an acre, which is like so much. But if anything that's going to be a little higher price is going to be have way reduced outputs. So basically, from down south, our grower, he harvests in general about 4 tons an acre, and which is where
that's a sweet spot.
Yeah, we kind of agree with him that's like anything below that, you're got super quality wines coming out, and
like us up here.
Too much more than that, you're gonna be kind of watered down and like searching for more flavor somehow through your winemaking, which is not a good pursuit if you can help it. So 4 tons an acre would be 3,000 bottles an acre. We up here do about 2 tons an acre, partially because it's high. It's really hard to grow grapes up here. So
we know it's very high.
The most
we're very high up here.
The most we could do is probably around 2 tons an acre, most vintages, and so that's like 1,500 bottles, more or less. little over 100 cases about per acre.
And one of the things that what he's doing, math in his head, which I love about Jesse, I personally think that's a sexy trait when he can do all this crazy math in his head. I'm like, ooh, I can't do that, but I can tell you
nerd love right there.
But I can tell you that things that are making a difference is how many feet between the rows, and then how many feet between each vine. Then how you prune that vine. How much are you allowing that grapevine to put out?
Yeah. Put out.
This is a risque show.
Right.
They get high.
How slutty do you let your vineyard get?
And then they put out. I don't know. Denali's not here, and you can see we've gone on.
You were the one. You did all this. I blame it on you.
I don't know. I got my Humira shot today. I'm like revving up.
Apparently.
Anyway, so all of those choices make a huge difference in your yield for that acreage. So every little step of how you lay out that vineyard is also going to create how much you yield from that, but also what the integrity of that vine is, and those grapes, and how great the wine is after that. So,
yeah,
awesome! Oh my God, we got through it.
Cheers!
I didn't think we were going to make it through all those questions. All right, next week.
Next week, what do you got?
We've got a surprise guest. I haven't even told Jessie about it. Ooh. I'm still working out some of the details. It's going to be a phenomenal episode. I'm fingers crossed that I can get her to be able to come on. It's going to be awesome. So we'll have some teasers this week if I get a yes. And don't forget, buy a bottle, plant a tree. We have, as of May 1st, starting the 1st of January, 9,380 trees that we have planted with Eden Reforestation Project. I mean, how incredible is that? Thank you for all of the purchases that you've made every time you buy a bottle. That is so super cool.
Yep.
So drink more.
Drink more, especially if it comes from Vivac Winery.
Well, yeah, because then you're doing something.
You know, you can also enjoy the rest of the world of wines.
All right. We're out. Okay. Small button on the bottom.
Oh, finish.
Yeah.